Hello and welcome to English 1301. We are in week 6 and module 3, and this week we are looking at turning in essay number 3. So let's take a look at what all is involved with that. All right, so we are writing a visual analysis paper. Hopefully you did all the assignments last week. I'll be getting those thesis statements back to you with comments. If you get 100 on that assignment, make sure that you go and read the comments because it is what we call a completion assignment. So you'd get a completion grade. So you would get 100 if you did it, or a 0 if you didn't. So please be sure to read the comments because just because you got 100 doesn't mean that it was necessarily an acceptable thesis. And or I may have some comments for you to help improve it and keep you on the right track. So be sure to take a look at that once you get it back. All right, so let's take a look at the actual assignment of the essay. We're going to take a look here at the instructions. You should be able to see, but I want to make sure we go over it. So, if you no fewer than 750 words, in other words, it has to be at least 750 words. And if you're doing this correctly, more than likely it's going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 800 to 1,000 words. Uh, you're going to be writing your analysis essay of an image of your choice, and it can be a photograph, a painting, or an advertisement. It could be a sculpture that you're doing. It's just a picture of the sculpture. Remember, what it cannot be is family pictures, because the message there is, family, and then we just have Vin Diesel saying family over and over again. Not really acceptable. Also, it's very difficult to uh, have to explain who all the people are, what the meaning is there, if it's just not readily apparent from the actual image. If you can't discern the image just by looking, the message of the image just by looking at it, then it's probably not an appropriate image for this assignment. The same goes for things like uh, scenes out of comic books or cartoons or uh, you know, not manga, sorry. Um, no manga pictures. Usually I find it's too hard to have to give too much background information about the characters in the picture, even though it's a very pivotal scene from that particular manga or anime. Um, so let's not use the host. I'm trying to make sure we don't use those. Also, scenes from video games, same kind of deal. You'd be shocked at how many video games I know about. So let's just leave it to advertisements or photos that you might find online or works of art that are already out there. It's probably easier for you anyways. In any case, make sure that you have a good image. You're going to be analyzing the image for the message that it gives. That is literally what your thesis statement is going to be. Your thesis statement is going to be what is the answer, the questions you're answering is what is the message of the image and how does it tell us what it is? And your answer is going to be the message of the image is blank, whatever you think the message is. And it tells us this, or it conveys this message, or it expresses this message by blank, blank, and blank. And you're going to have 3 ways it expresses that image, whether it's through uh, the actual, if there's actually people on it, if there's conversation, if there's words or what we call copy on it, if it's through color or through the focus of what's focused on in the image. Is there something that's unfocused? Um, does it uh, does it play on our emotions? Does it appeal to our logic? What does it? How is the image trying to express its message? And remember, you have to pick an image that has a discernible message. Because if you just pick a picture of a pretty flower, I mean, it's beautiful, and yes, there's a message of beauty there, but that's about it, unless there's something else in the image juxtaposing itself with the flower. So if you have any questions about what it might be a good image or not, please be sure to email me. You should have done the assignment with the working thesis and the image so that I can take a look at that. And again, those will be coming back to you very shortly. In any case, once you have your working thesis, you're ready to do this. 750 words. You're going to be using MLA format. So again, that means you're going to need to have everything double spaced, everything in Times New Roman. You're going to have a citation, a works cited page, because you're going to have to cite your image. So make sure that you have these things. There are plenty of resources in writing resources here on the main page of our Blackboard. There are plenty of sources on the internet. There are so many links to the internet sources as well. And our own textbook has that entire chapter of MLA uh, formatting. So there is literally no excuse to not have this paper turned in an MLA format. I also give you a template in the writing resources for how to write, or actually just all you have to do is pull it into Word and use that template to write your paper on so that you have the correct formatting. Remember, it's at least 20 points off right off the top if it is not double spaced or in the proper font or in what we would consider MLA format. So be sure that it's in MLA format. Make sure you have your works cited page for this one. If you don't have a works cited page for all the information that you're using, then it will be at 20 points off. So it's 20 points off if you don't have that, you don't have the MLA formatting, and also if you don't include the image in your paper, which we'll go over here in just a second. All right, so your analysis is going to be evaluated on how clear and focused your thesis statement is. So make sure that you're answering the question being, what is the message of your image? Make sure you're answering that properly. That's your thesis statement. It's really that simple. How well the essay conforms to the basic features of an analysis. So for this particular essay, you're going to have your introduction. Then you're going to have the description of the image, where you're going to be describing the image as if I were, say, a blind person who used to have sight, but I no longer do. So you're going, so let me repeat that. So you're going to have your introduction, where you're going to have your thesis statement at the end of your introduction, right? You're going to tell me what the message of the image is and how it tells it. Then the next section is going to be a description of that image, a detailed description. This is where you use your lush specificity, where you tell me you're going to describe that picture as if I'm blind and I can't see, but I used to have sight. So I know what you're talking about, but I just can't see it. I want to be able to picture your image in my mind from your description. So consider that. That's where you're going to use all your descriptive words. You're going to give all the details of what's in the image. You're not really talking so much about what the image means in this particular part of the paper. You are really just describing it. So then, after you've got your introduction and your description of the image, you're going to have the body of your work, where you're going to talk about the three ways that the image conveys its message. And those three ways can be any number of things, any number of the strategies that we talked about last time. And I will go over those again briefly before we go. But um, any of those three strategies, or three of those strategies, any of those strategies, focus, lighting, color, uh, words, anything in there that did that. That's how you're going to talk about. That's what you're going to talk about in the body of your paper. It's all the evidence that you need to describe how the image conveys the message. And then finally, you're going to have your conclusion, which restates your thesis and wraps it all up. So there you go. You should have plenty of space to write about this. And don't be afraid to actually give some good descriptions and kind of go out there. Now, you're going to need to cite some of those strategies. And if you notice, I'll show you on every strategy I've given you citation information if you need to use those strategies that I've provided for you in the course. If you use other strategies that you find on the internet, you're going to need to cite those properly as well. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But still, on the paper, so how well your citations are integrated into the essay. So make sure that you're using parenthetical in-text citations, which is just the parentheses with the author's name of where you got the information. If you're using specific information like a quote from any of those sources, make sure that you include the author's name in your quote and introduce it. Say where you got your information from so that your reader can be assured that you are using quality sources and not just something you found on the internet. Now, I realize that we're going to be using things found on the internet, but make sure that you introduce them so that people aren't sus about it. Let's see, how well your analysis is supported with reasonable assertions and evidence. In other words, make sure that what you're saying makes sense. Make sure that what you are saying, the reasons why it means this or what it says makes sense for your image. Of course, how well you use clear, coherent, complete, and correct sentences, because this is a formal academic essay. So while you are still kind of giving your opinion, you're backing up your opinion with evidence about why you think what you think the message is and why or how you think it's being conveyed by the picture. You still need to make sure that you're uh, conveying that in a professional manner. Let's see how well you conform to MLA documentation. Again, important because this is a class that's introducing the different types of essays you might be writing, and formatting is way more important than you think. I know that there's a big brouhaha right now about nobody cares about the content because they're just looking at my format. Not true. Your content is important, but again, if your formatting is perfect or near perfect, it goes a long way toward the validity of your content. And I just don't know how else to put that. Uh, that's just human nature. I will read a great, well written paper, but if it's presented to me in a very sloppy manner, I'm not going to have a very positive feeling about it until after I've read it. That's just the way humans are, me included. Sorry, but I will still read it. Don't think I'm not reading them. But if you do get a grade because you're formatting, if you get a bad grade because your formatting's bad, well, that's a good part of the paper. So please, it's the one thing you can control. You have complete control over how your paper is formatted. So make sure that you exert that control and do it correctly. But then your content will speak for itself. Finally, let's see. After the last sentence of your essay, be sure to put a word count in there. A lot of people aren't doing it, so I'm probably just going to start taking off a lot of points. A word count is simple. It tells me that you're paying attention to what you're working on and that you're cognizant of how much work you're doing. So please be sure to put your word count on there. I mean, yes, can I get a word count? Absolutely, but it's not about me getting a word count. It's about you telling me that you're cognizant of what your word count is. Also, and this is very important for this particular paper, you need to include an image embedded in your paper at the end of your paper. Do not put your image at the front of the paper. I will take off points. It goes at the end because the whole point of the description of your picture or your image is that you are using it to describe it to me so I can picture it in my head. And I have a very vivid imagination, so I can do that. But make sure that your image is in there at the end of your paper. If you don't include an image, how can I know what you're talking about in your paper? It's pretty simple logic there. So if no image is a lot of points off, possibly 20 or more. So it's a great way to lose a lot of points by not including things that you can absolutely control for this particular paper. And also make sure you have a work cited. You have to cite your image. All right. So again, automatic deduction of 20 points if the following are missing: MLA formatting, a works cited page, or your image. And here's the due date. And that's all for next week. So if you have any questions about the instructions, please be sure to let me know. Okay, let's move on with some of the other things we need to make sure that cover. Um, oh yes, this week the turning in of your essay will count for attendance. So if for some reason you are not turning your essay in on time, please be sure to let me know so that I can mark you for here, I guess, or whatever. But we're really getting down to the last half of the course, so you need to make sure that you are getting things turned in on time. Um, some things to keep in mind. Let's see if we go back over here. Remember to make sure to take a look at how to write a visual essay, organizing your analysis essay. The strategies that I talked about are here. So things that you can use. These are tips for analyzing advertisements. If you use information from here with your paper, you can cite this web page. Um, messages. How if you're using information about it, persuading through logos, pathos, or ethos, make sure that you cite here, and down here at the bottom is the works cited entry. And there should be that for literally all of these. Works cited entries at the bottom if you use any of these strategies for this. Finally, there's how to cite your image, which is here. This takes you to the OWL at Purdue. You have to scroll down a bit, but it will show you down here how to cite different things, and images, paintings, photographs are right here. So make sure that's cited. Finally, if you need help finding where your picture came from, you can always use TinEye, where you put your image in, and it will give you where the image shows up on the internet, and you can just choose one of those places for your citations. So there you go. If you have any questions, as always, please be sure to email me, and have a good week.